Hello and welcome to my channel, Just Wanna Craft. This is Joan. In this video, I have 6 inexpensive Halloween crafts for you. So let's get started. For my first craft, this is super easy and really inexpensive. I picked up this candle. It's a flameless one that uses batteries. I got that from the Dollar Tree for I believe it was $1.25. And this pack of napkins I actually found last year at the Dollar Tree, but they still have them this year. So I just took the wrapping off the candle and then I measured out quickly roughly how much I would need to cover. And then I cut off the extra half. Then I'm just going to line up where I think looks good. I'm going to use my Mod Podge to cover the whole candle first. Actually, not the whole candle, just I worked a section at a time. So I found where I wanted it to be the center or the front. And then after I had put the Mod Podge underneath, I also went over the top. So then I worked just a section at a time, trying to make sure I had as few wrinkles as possible, but it was okay if it wrinkled up with the napkin. It looked okay. So then I just covered the whole thing, worked another about inch section. When I got to where the two sides of the napkin were going to meet up, this was going to be the back, but I still wanted it to look pretty good. So I ripped off that design so just the gray was showing. And then I'm also, well, I'm going to show that in a second, but there you can see how when it was wet, it was very easy to peel off. So I peeled the bottom. And then here I'm taking off that bottle so that it just is two sides of gray matching up. Since it was wet, it was really easy to just peel it with my finger. Now I'm going to take some of my extra napkin and rip off a gray piece and then attach that in that space. And when that was on, you really couldn't even see where it was matched up. So that is pretty much it for my candle. I just had to make sure on the top that the sides were down around the top and it folded down a little bit. So then I just took my nail and ripped off the extra. So it was just along the top of the candle. And there is my finished Halloween candle. Really like the effect this gives off and the napkin on the candle. Next, I'm going to be making a set of 3 little mini witches brooms. So I'm taking a wooden skewer and I'm just painting that in a black acrylic paint. Then I'm basically going to make a tassel here. So I'm taking my jute cord here and wrapping it around, I think I wrapped it about 40 or 45 times around 3 of my fingers. Then I'm going to take a little piece of twine that I cut off and tie it around the top. Just knot it one time. I cut off the extra and then I just twisted that knot to the bottom so I won't see it. Then I cut through the loop there. Then I'm just holding it tightly in my hand and I'm cutting it off so they're all the same length. I'm going to make a little section there and I wrapped around the cord to see how much I needed, and I'm going to paint this orange. So I'm taking, I believe this is called Canyon Sunset, and I'm just going to paint my jute cord so that it's all orange. I just took one coat. When it was dry, I'm going to wrap it around again and just tie it off with a knot at the back. I think I wrapped it about 3 or 4 times. Then I just cut off the extra. And then I'm going to try to fluff out the bottom a little bit to make it look like the bottom of a broom. Then I'm going to take the skewer and work it through the top. I cut off the bottom so it wasn't so pointy and would stand a little bit better. There, I'm just getting it to stand, kind of fluffing out the bottom part again. I cut down the broomstick and saved the other half for another one of my brooms right here. It was hard to get in, so I used an extra skewer and used the pointy part to make my little hole for me first to get it in. With my other 2, I did one of the wrapping parts around black. Here I'm just touching up the broom. And the other one, you can see the extra piece of jute orange there. I put that around my 3rd broom. So my last step was I made these little tags on my computer. The shape that I used, I wasn't quite happy with, so I did end up cutting it down a little bit more. So they say Happy Halloween, Boo, and Hocus Pocus. And I'm going to take a hole punch and punch a hole in each of them. And then I'm going to attach them with a little piece of jute cord. So I got a nice thin piece of cord. I pulled the jute cord apart. There's about 3 of them wrapped together. And that gave me a nice thin piece. And then I just tied a bow around the top of the broom. Here are my 3 finished brooms. I think they turned out really cute. And it was really quick and easy. I think I finished the whole craft in about 30 minutes. For my 3rd Halloween craft, I picked up one of these plastic skulls from the Dollar Tree. They glow in the dark, but I'm going to be painting it. Just remove the tag. Now I'm cutting a circle on top. I'm going to be making basically a skull planter here. So I took my X-Acto knife after I carefully traced my hole. And once I first got the knife in, then it was pretty easy to just make a cut around. And I just went around and cleaned up my edge. Now I'm going to take, this is chalk paint by Waverly. It's called Ink. And I'm going to do a coat over the whole skull. Once that was dry, I did do a second coat. With the plastic, it kind of wanted to pull away a little bit, the paint. So here's my second coat. And when that was dry, I am going to take, and I'm making a gray color just with some white and a little bit of black. And I'm going to cut a section off of my sponge. I'm going to use my sponge to just dab this color over the whole skull. So each time I would get more paint, I would dab some off so I didn't have too much on the sponge. And I made sure to change my angles. On the front, I went heavier on the teeth. I wanted those to stand out more. And then just got in all the little crevices of the skull, the eyes, nostrils. Then I took that same paint that I had left over and I just added a little bit more black to make it darker. And now I'm going to go over the skull again, just adding some more dimension to it. When that was done, I'm going to add my flowers. I'm taking some just foam here. Now, I didn't do it here, but I did have to go back later and I added rocks to the bottom because when I added the flowers on top, it made it top heavy and it fell over. So I did add rocks on the bottom. I started with these roses. I got these from Michael's for a really good price when they were 60% off. And I'm just going to fill the whole skull. I took about 6 of the roses. And that was my first step. I did take that plastic off the bottom. I also got those sparkly leaves and this little, I'm not sure if those are boxwood, kind of purplish in color. And I'm just going to fill in my skull. It's just really quick. I also used some of those leaves around the bottom. And here is my finished skull planter. For my 4th craft, I found this little cauldron at Walmart for 97 cents. And I didn't like how the plastic looked, so I'm going to make it look a little bit better. I am just taking some black acrylic paint and mixing in baking soda to make it thicker. And I'm going to do 1 coat with that. Just going over the whole bucket. Added a little bit more there. It wasn't quite thick enough. And I just did 1 coat on the bottom. When that was dry, I wanted it to be even thicker, so I went back with another coat. And this time I added even more baking soda to my paint, so it was really thick and gave me a lot of texture on this pot. So here you can see how it looked after it was dry. And now to make it look a little rusty, I'm going to take some cinnamon and I'm just going to kind of sprinkle it and put it on different areas of the cauldron. I tapped it on or I put it on with my fingers. Just got it in different random spots. Now, to make sure this paint doesn't chip off and to keep my cinnamon in place, I am going over the whole cauldron with some Mod Podge. And actually, the Mod Podge gave it a nice little look too. It kind of became a little bit lighter, grayish in some areas. Then I took Folk Art paint in the color Thicket and added some white to it. Mix that together to cover up this tissue paper that's going to go on the top of my cauldron. And then I put rocks in the bottom because I knew it would get a little top heavy, and just filled in the space with some plastic bags and then put my piece of tissue paper in there. Now, I looked a long time in a lot of different places for what I was going to put in the top of my cauldron. And then I found these little green ornaments at Menards. It wasn't exactly what I wanted, but I just kind of ended up settling. So I'm just attaching them with hot glue, trying to make it look like little green bubbles foaming out of this cauldron. I glued more of the ornaments on top so it was built up. And here's my finished cauldron. I really like the way the bottom turned out. Like I said, I'm not so sure. I wish I'd been able to find some better ornaments, but still wanted to include it. Next, I'm going to be making a set of 3 books to look like a spell book, a potions book, and a brews book. So I'm taking these library books I got for free from a school library that was just getting rid of some extra books. They are all hardcover. And I'm going to be covering it with tissue paper. So I'm using Mod Podge. I just cut down the tissue paper to roughly the size. I start on the inside, and then working a section at a time, I added some Mod Podge. And then as I put this tissue paper down, I'm trying to make sure it has a lot of wrinkles in it. There were a couple sections where I added a little bit too much paint and got a little too wet and made a little bit of a hole, but that was fine. Just going to add to the character of the book. So then just along the spine of the book, and then as I worked around, for the corners, I tried to fold it like a present by angling it and then folding it down, and then onto the back. So I'm just using the same piece of tissue paper all the way around. And then here I cut off the extra and finished folding down the tops and bottom. And that will complete my covering my book. I did that to 2 other books, and then I did a coat. It actually took me 2 coats to cover it fully of just black acrylic paint, and made sure to open it up and get on the top and the bottom because that would show. And on my first one, I wasn't so great. I did get some paint on the top of the pages, so I made sure on my other ones to be more careful. I picked up these stickers from the Dollar Tree, and it probably didn't matter because of my next step, but they were just a little too shiny for me, so I did go over them quickly with just that other shade of gold. Now, these are sticky, but they didn't stick the best, so I'm going to have to go back and fix that later. But then I did a coat of black paint over the letters. I'm trying to make them look aged. And then I dabbed away extra paint with a tissue there. So here I tried to attach them with some Mod Podge, and I found that just didn't work. Then I tried to go on top to help seal it, and the letters just all moved around on me. So I did cover the whole book, the front and the back cover, with the Mod Podge. I didn't want my paint to chip. And there again, I'm covering over my letters. So to help me hold these letters down, I used hot glue. Even this was a little tricky and they didn't want to stick with the hot glue. Just using a little tool there to help me get a little dab and then sticking it under the letters. To finish off my books, I decided to take this napkin that came from the Dollar Tree, made sure to take off the backing, and I'm going to put part of this on the front and the back of my stack of books. So on the front of one and on the back of another. So I use this little trick with taking a paintbrush and getting the napkin wet to help me tear it away. I wanted to use this skull and books for the front, so I'm just trying to get rid of that extra design around there. And most of the extra gray part, wanted to rip it away. And then I held it up and it was still too big. So then I decided to take off that extra bottle on the side and get this even smaller. Once it was a good size, I added Mod Podge to the front. And then I'm going to put down my piece of napkin and put the Mod Podge over it again. So for the back, I used just a little section of, it was like mostly a bottle and the candle, and did the same thing with the Mod Podge to hold it on. Then I wanted to add some of the gold, so I took just a thin little paintbrush and I'm going to go around the edge of all of the napkin. I put a little line down and then I smudged it with my finger, just going all the way around that section of napkin. And then I did not film it, but I also added gold to the eyes of the skull. On my middle book, I'm going to add this little spider to the bottom under where it says spellbook. I'm just trying to rip away all the extra gray that I can, and I'm going to attach this also with Mod Podge. Once it was dry, I went over some of those gray areas with black paint so that just really the spider would show through. To finish my books, I'm going to hot glue them all together. Just take a good generous amount of hot glue. Then I made sure to stand them up so they'd be lined up. And then my back book. You can see the black paint I was talking about earlier on the top of that potions book. And I did also do gold around the back of the napkin. So I really like these books, the set of 3, how they turned out with using the tissue paper technique. For my last craft of this video, I saw this spider web at the Dollar Tree and I knew I wanted to do something with it. I removed that large spider and I wanted to take off this tinsel and just wanted basically the frame of the spider web to redo it. The tinsel was attached with little hooks throughout, so I just popped it off the hook, and then around the top it was twisted around. So after just taking the tinsel off the hooks and then unwrapping it around, it came off very easily. Then I removed all of the extra pieces that were hanging down on those hooks, just going around the whole thing. I'm going to take this yarn that I got at Walmart and I'm pulling off a really long piece. Looking back, I think if I were to redo it, I would not have taken such a big piece, but I started by attaching it with hot glue, making sure that was dry and nice and secure before I started to wrap it. I started twisting it around, and then I decided it would be easier to make a little ball out of the big piece that I had cut off, so I kind of twisted around my finger, and then I was trying to loop that through, but as time went on, it just became more and more unraveled, and so I ended up just taking that big chunk and trying to keep it together in my hand and going around and around. This was kind of time consuming. I won't lie and say this is a quick craft. But every so often I would take some hot glue just to make sure it was nice and secure. And at each intersection where a line going across and a line going down met, I'd also use some hot glue. After I made it around the whole outside, I went to the next loop around the spider web. Just again, as starting with some hot glue and looping all the way around. This was a little bit trickier because I had to fit through the smaller space. Once all of those sections were done, I'm going to do the sections that run down. So I started at the top and then just twisted around. Here I had much shorter pieces of yarn, which was easier to just pull it through. At these intersections, I looped it around, crisscrossing it to make sure all of that plastic piece was covered, and then just kept going down with the one piece of yarn. As I looped, I just made sure I pulled it tight so that none of that plastic was showing. In the middle, I again just made sure to cross over so that all of the plastic was covered, just going through each of the different sections and looping it back and forth. And I think covering it with this yarn just made it look a lot better. It was time consuming, but it was worth it. These flowers came from Michael's, and the smaller bunches I was able to get for, I think they were on sale for 99 cents. So a pretty good deal. And I started just by cutting off a bunch of these purple and black And I'm going to sort of make a wreath out of this. I guess not sort of, it is going to be like a spiderweb wreath. And I could just loop the wires at the bottom of these flowers around the bottom part of the spider web. So I kind of went back and forth between purple and black, but just so it wasn't so perfect, I did do some black and black next to each other. Just included these different leaves. I had these sparkly leaves that I included in different areas here and there. So these I had to hot glue on. So I just hot glue the bottom and then find a good place to attach it. And then I also had some of those smaller leaves. Just finding a good spot for them and attaching them in, making sure not to burn my fingers. And finally, I used these, I don't even know what to call them, but they were sparkly, glittery, and attached them at different sections at the bottom of my spider web. It was a little tricky to make sure I had a spot that where the hot glue would hold on to something else. Now I'm going to redo my spider that was originally on this web. I am taking some black paint and baking soda to make it thicker. I want my spider to look like it's a little hairy. So a good amount of baking soda mixed in with my black paint. And I wanted it a little bit lighter so it would contrast with my black yarn. And then I'm going to do a coat of the paint. I made sure to get it on both sides of the legs. Once that was done, it was still not quite enough contrast with the yarn. The spider just didn't stick out enough. So after I got my texture on there, I am going to add this gray. I just went lightly over, kind of patted away any extra so that you could still see some black through. But I went over the legs and the whole body of the spider. And this really helped the spider show up more on the web. So I just attached it back with some hot glue in the center. I also attached some of the legs with some hot glue to hold it on a little bit better. And that finishes my wreath. And I think this might be my favorite one from the video. I'm really happy with how it turned out. That concludes my Halloween craft video. I hope you enjoyed these crafts, and thanks so much for watching. Happy Halloween!